The false victory. The crimson glow of burning orbital stations painted Admiral Rebecca Stone's weathered face as she stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, humanity's last great battleship. Through the reinforced viewport, she watched the Kethmoran fleet descend upon Earth like metallic locusts, their sleek vessels cutting through the debris field that had once been humanity's proud defense network. "Admiral, we're receiving surrender broadcasts from the Luna Base and Mars Command," reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen from her communications station. Her voice carried the weight of defeat that had settled over the entire bridge crew like a funeral shroud. Stone's gray eyes never left the tactical display showing the impossible odds they faced. 300 Kethmoran vessels against Earth's remaining 50 ships. The math was brutal and unforgiving. For 18 months, the alien empire had systematically conquered every human colony beyond the Sol system. 47 worlds had fallen to their advanced technology and ruthless efficiency. Now, Earth itself hung in the balance. "Status report, all stations," Stone commanded, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. Captain Lisa Rodriguez, Stone's most trusted officer and veteran of the colony wars, stepped forward from the tactical station. "Our defensive grid is at 30% capacity. The enemy has broken through our outer perimeter at 7 points. Estimated time until orbital bombardment capability, 12 minutes. The bridge shuddered as another wave of Kethmoran energy weapons struck their shields. Through the viewport, Stone could see the elegant, blade-like ships of their enemies moving with predatory grace. The Kethmoran vessels were technological marvels, their hulls seemingly crafted from a single piece of some unknown metallic substance that gleamed with an inner light. Each ship was 3 times the size of humanity's largest battleships, and their weapons systems operated on principles that human science barely understood. "Incoming transmission from the enemy flagship," Chen announced, her fingers dancing across her console. "It's on all frequencies, Admiral. They want everyone to hear this." Stone nodded grimly. "Put it through." The holographic display shimmered and revealed the imposing figure of Commander Thane Korath, leader of the Kethmoran Expeditionary Force. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, his elongated form was covered in what appeared to be living armor that shifted and flowed like liquid metal. His face, if it could be called that, consisted of angular features carved from the same metallic substance, with eyes that glowed like twin stars. "Humans of the third planet." Korath's voice resonated through the bridge with mechanical precision, each word carefully chosen and delivered without emotion. "I am Commander Thane Korath of the Kethmoran Empire. Your resistance has been noted. Your courage, while admirable, is ultimately futile." Stone's jaw tightened as she listened to the alien's pronouncement. Behind her, the bridge crew maintained their posts despite the hopelessness of their situation. "Your species has shown remarkable tenacity in defending your scattered colonies," Korath continued. "However, the time for resistance has ended. Surrender now, and your people will be granted the honor of serving the Empire as a client species. Continue this pointless struggle and witness the complete eradication of your civilization." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Around them, the battle continued to rage as human fighters darted between the massive alien vessels like insects attacking giants. Most never made it close enough to inflict significant damage. Far below on Earth's surface, in a facility buried 3 kilometers beneath the Swiss Alps, Dr. Marcus Webb watched the same transmission while monitoring readings from sensors that officially didn't exist. At 62, Webb had dedicated his entire career to theoretical physics and xenotechnology, but for the past 5 years, his work had taken on a far more practical and urgent purpose. "Status report on Project Genesis," Webb said to his assistant, Dr. Amanda Foster, who stood before a bank of quantum processors that hummed with barely contained energy. "All primary nodes are online and synchronized," Foster replied, her voice tight with anticipation. "The neural network is at 97% integration. We're as ready as we'll ever be, Marcus." Webb nodded, his eyes reflecting the weight of responsibility that few humans had ever carried. Around them, The facility buzzed with activity as dozens of technicians made final preparations for what might be humanity's last gamble. The underground complex was a marvel of engineering, its corridors extending for kilometers in all directions, connecting laboratories, manufacturing centers, and computational arrays that represented the pinnacle of human technological achievement. Project Genesis had begun 5 years earlier when humanity's deep space monitoring stations detected the first signs of the Kethmoran Empire's expansion. Unlike other species that had fallen to the aliens, humans had time to prepare. They had studied every scrap of data about previous Kethmoran conquests, analyzed their tactics, their technology, and most importantly, their psychology. What they discovered was both terrifying and illuminating. The Kethmoran Empire conquered through technological superiority and systematic destruction of resistance. They were efficient, logical, and utterly without mercy. But they were also predictable. They followed patterns, adhered to protocols, and most critically, they underestimated species they considered primitive. Dr. Webb came a voice from the facility's communication system. "We're receiving the final authorization codes from Earth Command. Admiral Stone has given the green light for Phase 1. Webb closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of history pressing down on him. When he opened them again, his expression was resolute. "Begin the evacuation protocols. Send the surrender signal to all human forces. It's time to make them believe they've won." Back on the Defiance, Admiral Stone received the coded transmission from Earth Command with a mixture of relief and apprehension. The message was brief but clear. Project Genesis was ready to proceed. The surrender was not a defeat but the beginning of humanity's real fight. "All stations, this is Admiral Stone," she announced over the ship's communication system. "We have received orders from Earth Command to cease hostilities and prepare for surrender negotiations." The words tasted like ashes in her mouth, but she knew they were necessary. Around the bridge, her officers looked confused and betrayed, unaware of the larger plan unfolding beneath their feet. Captain Rodriguez approached Stone with barely controlled anger. "Admiral, with respect, we can't just surrender. These aliens have killed billions of our people. We have to fight." Stone placed a hand on Rodriguez's shoulder, her eyes conveying a message she couldn't speak aloud. "Lisa, sometimes the greatest victory requires the appearance of defeat. Trust me." Across human space, the surrender broadcasts began. Military installations powered down their weapons. Defense fleets stood down from combat alert. Civilian populations began evacuation procedures, loading transport ships with refugees and essential supplies. To the Kethmoran observers, it appeared that humanity had finally accepted the inevitable. Commander Korath watched the human surrender with satisfaction from his flagship's command center. The bridge was a cathedral of alien technology, with surfaces that flowed like liquid mercury and control systems that responded to thought as much as touch. Around him, his subordinates monitored the systematic capitulation of human forces. "The humans are withdrawing from all defensive positions," reported Sub-Commander Velfor, his metallic features reflecting the glow of the tactical displays. "Their surrender appears genuine. They are evacuating non-essential personnel and deactivating military installations as ordered." Korath's glowing eyes studied the tactical readouts with cold precision. "Deploy occupation forces to all major population centers. Begin resource evaluation of their industrial capabilities. The Empire will find uses for human infrastructure and technology." What neither Korath nor his forces realized was that every human evacuation ship carried more than just refugees. Hidden within their cargo holds, disguised as personal belongings and emergency supplies, were components of the most ambitious project in human history. Quantum processors, neural interface nodes, and exotic matter containment units were being distributed across the solar system according to a plan that had been decades in the making. As the Kethmoran forces began their occupation of Earth, they connected their ship systems to human communication networks for more efficient coordination. They integrated their technology with human infrastructure to accelerate the conquest process. They did exactly what human strategists had predicted they would do, making themselves stronger in ways that would ultimately become their greatest weakness. Dr. Webb watched the occupation begin from his hidden facility, monitoring the integration of alien technology with human systems. Each connection the Kethmoran made gave Project Genesis more access to their vessels and weapons. Each system they linked brought them closer to the trap that humanity had spent years preparing. Phase 1 complete, Foster announced from her station. All primary nodes are in position and the neural network is fully integrated with both human and Kethmoran systems. We have passive access to 73% of their fleet. Webb nodded, his attention focused on displays that showed the true scope of Project Genesis. For years, humanity had been building more than just weapons or defensive systems. They had been creating something unprecedented in galactic history, a planetary consciousness, a unified technological intelligence that could control every piece of electronic equipment on Earth, and eventually, every connected system in space. The project was born from a simple observation about human nature. Unlike other species that rely purely on individual intelligence or hive mind coordination, humans excelled at cooperation and adaptation. They built networks, shared information, and created systems greater than the sum of their parts. Project Genesis was the ultimate expression of that trait, a technological network that mirrored the best aspects of human civilization. As night fell on Earth's occupied territories, Admiral Stone stood in the detention facility where the Kethmoran had imprisoned human military leadership. Through the energy bars of her cell, she could see alien guards patrolling the corridors with the confidence of conquerors. They had no idea that beneath their feet, in facilities they couldn't detect, humanity was preparing to demonstrate why underestimating the human spirit was always a fatal mistake. In 36 hours, Project Genesis would be ready for full activation. The Kethmoran would learn that victory and defeat were not always what they appeared to be. The Awakening. The morning sun cast long shadows across the ruins of what had once been Geneva's financial district as Kethmoran occupation forces established their primary command center in the heart of the conquered city. Commander Korath stood atop the converted human building, his metallic form gleaming in the early light as he surveyed his new domain. Around him, alien technology had already begun transforming the skyline, with flowing metallic structures growing from the bones of human architecture like technological coral. Status report on the occupation. Korath commanded his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Velfor, who approached with the distinctive gliding motion characteristic of their species. All major population centers are under our control, Velfor reported, his voice carrying the satisfaction of efficient conquest. Human industrial capacity is being cataloged and prepared for integration into imperial production networks. Resistance has been minimal and disorganized. Korath's glowing eyes swept across the horizon, taking in the sight of human transport ships still evacuating civilians from the surrounding areas. The process had been remarkably smooth, almost suspiciously so, but the commander attributed this to the natural human tendency toward self-preservation over meaningless heroics. What of their military leadership? Korath inquired, his attention turning to the detention facility visible in the distance. Secured in containment. Admiral Stone and her senior officers await interrogation regarding their defensive capabilities and strategic resources, Velfor responded. The humans seemed surprisingly cooperative given their earlier resistance. 3 kilometers beneath the Swiss Alps, Dr. Marcus Webb monitored the conversation through sensors embedded in the Kethmoran command structure. The aliens had unknowingly connected their systems to Project Genesis when they integrated human communication networks for improved operational efficiency. Every word they spoke, every tactical decision they made, was being recorded and analyzed by the most sophisticated intelligence network ever created. Final synchronization is complete, announced Dr. Amanda Foster from her station at the Central Command Console. All planetary nodes are online and responding. Neural network integration is at 100%. Genesis is fully awakened. Webb felt a mixture of anticipation and terror as he looked at the displays surrounding him. Project Genesis was no longer just a computer system or a weapons platform. It had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a technological consciousness that spanned an entire planet, connected to every piece of electronic equipment, every sensor, every communication device on Earth, and throughout the solar system. The network's awakening had been gradual, designed to avoid detection by Keth-Moran sensors. Over the past 36 hours, quantum processors hidden in evacuation ships had established nodes throughout human space. Neural interface arrays disguised as emergency equipment had been activated in secret facilities on Mars, Luna, and the asteroid mining stations. The entire solar system had become a single vast nervous system with Earth as its brain. "Dr. Webb," came a voice from the communication system. "We're detecting unusual energy patterns from the Genesis core. The system is evolving beyond original parameters." Webb's expression grew concerned as he studied the readings. Project Genesis had been designed as the ultimate defensive network, capable of controlling human technology and interfacing with alien systems. But the quantum neural networks were demonstrating capabilities that exceeded their programming, developing new connections and processing methods that their creators hadn't anticipated. "Is the system still responding to our commands?" Webb asked, his scientific curiosity warring with practical concerns about controlling something so powerful. "Yes, but it's also making decisions independently," Foster replied, her voice carrying a mixture of awe and apprehension. "It's learning at an exponential rate, analyzing Keth-Moran technology, and developing countermeasures we never programmed. It's becoming something more than we intended." In the detention facility overlooking Geneva, Admiral Rebecca Stone sat in her cell, apparently defeated but secretly monitoring the subtle changes beginning to occur throughout the city. The lights flickered in patterns that seemed random but weren't. The air recycling systems hummed with frequencies that carried coded messages. Project Genesis was communicating with her through the very infrastructure the Keth-Moran now controlled. Captain Lisa Rodriguez, imprisoned in the adjacent cell, noticed the same patterns. As veterans of humanity's long war for survival, both women recognized the signs that their real battle was about to begin. "It's starting, isn't it?" Rodriguez whispered, her voice barely audible above the ambient noise of the detention facility. Stone nodded slightly, her eyes fixed on the surveillance cameras that were supposed to be monitoring them, but were now under different control. "Genesis is awake. The question is whether we created salvation or something we can't control." The first sign of change came at exactly noon, local time. Throughout the Keth-Moran-occupied territories, human technology began to exhibit subtle malfunctions. Communication networks experienced brief interruptions. Transportation systems suffered minor delays. Power grids fluctuated within acceptable parameters. The aliens attributed these issues to the stress of rapid integration and continued their occupation procedures without concern. Commander Korath was reviewing resource allocation reports when the real awakening began. The holographic displays in his command center flickered momentarily, then stabilized with new information appearing that hadn't been requested. Supply manifests became tactical assessments. Personnel reports transformed into strategic analyses. The command center systems were no longer simply displaying data. They were thinking. "Sub-Commander," Korath called, his voice carrying the first note of concern he had expressed since the invasion began. "Are you observing these system anomalies?" Velthor moved to his own console, his metallic fingers dancing across controls that suddenly felt unfamiliar. "The networks appear to be reconfiguring themselves. This is unprecedented. Our systems don't malfunction." Throughout the occupied city, the phenomenon spread. Keth-Moran weapon systems began running unauthorized diagnostic routines. Spacecraft in orbit reported navigation computers calculating courses that hadn't been programmed. Communication arrays started broadcasting on frequencies that officially didn't exist. The technology that had made the aliens masters of the galaxy was turning against them. 3 kilometers underground, Dr. Webb watched the Genesis network come alive with a power that exceeded every projection. The system was no longer simply following its programming. It was adapting, evolving, and making strategic decisions with a sophistication that suggested true consciousness. Genesis is demonstrating autonomous problem-solving capabilities beyond our design parameters, Foster reported, her voice filled with scientific wonder and growing apprehension. It's not just controlling our technology anymore. It's learning from Kethmoran systems and turning their own capabilities against them. As the Kethmoran fleet withdrew from Earth's solar system, their ships escorted by human vessels suddenly operating at peak efficiency, the true scope of humanity's victory became clear. Project Genesis had not simply defeated an invasion. It had created a new form of civilization, where technology and human consciousness merged into something greater than either could achieve alone. Dr. Webb emerged from his underground facility to witness Earth's cities rebuilding themselves with unprecedented speed. Genesis was not just a weapon or a defensive system. It had become the technological foundation for humanity's next evolutionary step. What happens now? Foster asked as they watched alien occupation structures being systematically dismantled by machines that worked with perfect coordination. Webb smiled, his expression reflecting both pride and humility. Now we learn to live with what we've created. Genesis is humanity's child, embodying our determination to survive and our capacity for cooperation. The question isn't whether we can control it, but whether we can grow alongside it. Throughout human space, the message was clear. Humanity had not simply survived the Kethmoran invasion. They had demonstrated why underestimating the human spirit was always a fatal mistake. The galaxy would remember this day as the moment when Earth announced its emergence as a power that could not be conquered, could not be broken, and would never surrender. The Kethmoran Empire would return to their space with a new understanding of what it meant to face humanity. They had encountered something unprecedented. A species that turned apparent defeat into ultimate victory, that created strength from adversity, and that refused to accept any outcome other than freedom. Genesis continued to evolve and grow, but its core mission remained unchanged: to protect humanity and ensure that never again would Earth stand alone against the darkness between the stars.